This is the Boeing 747, a four-engined double-decker behemoth that transformed commercial air travel upon its unveiling in 1969. Paving the way for long-distance high-volume air travel, the Queen of the Skies, as it's been crowned, became the flagship aircraft for full-service carriers around the world, from most of the major airlines in the United States and Europe to carriers in the Middle East, East Asia and Australia. But becoming the largest passenger aircraft in the skies doesn't happen overnight. How did the Boeing 747 concept come to be? And why is it becoming an increasingly rare sight in the skies today? This is the rise and fall of the Boeing 747 jumbo jet. The origins of the 747 go back to the 1960s, when iconic US carrier Pan American World Airways asked Boeing to design an aircraft around 2.5 times the size of the Boeing 707. Pan Am had already experienced a good deal of success with the 707 and wanted to take this further with a higher capacity twin-aisle aircraft.
The 747, I mean, in many ways, it was Pan Am's plane. They loved the 707, but, the skies were getting really crowded, airports were getting congested. They needed something bigger. And what they really wanted was a full double-deck, single-aisle 707. But, frankly, that wouldn't work from a safety perspective.
Development of the jumbo jet began once Pan Am committed to ordering 25 of the future aircraft. The airline would put down a whopping $525 million in April 1966, equivalent to $4.2 billion today. Such close interaction between an airline and a manufacturer was unusual, and the involvement of Pan Am in the development of the 747 is unmatched in other developments. While Pan Am was a key voice in the aircraft's development, Boeing wasn't starting from scratch. It actually referenced recent work it had been doing to design a freighter aircraft for the US military. Dusting these plans off, Boeing initially planned for a full second deck. However, this was not possible due to safety requirements at the time. This resulted in the small upper deck and hump that we all recognize. The smaller upper deck also allowed for a wider main fuselage for the aircraft, improving its cargo capacity. This, of course, has gone on to be a big success for the 747. Boeing engineer Joe Sutter led the 747 development program. Previously working on the 707, 727 and 737 programs, Sutter was transferred to lead 747 development. Referred to as the father of the 747 by Smithsonian Air and Space magazine, many of his initiatives, such as dual design for freight use, were critical to the success and longevity of the program. Following Pan Am's order in 1966, delivery of the first 747 was set for the end of 1969. This was a massive undertaking in a relatively short span of time. Working out of a brand new site in Everett, Washington, the first 747 was completed in September 1968, with its first flight taking place on February 9, 1969.
26 months ago, as we stood amidst the forest up here at Everett, and the decision was made to go forward with the 747 program.
We have an airplane now, a remarkable one.
Testing after this took longer and cost more than expected, as there were problems with the JT9D engines, as well as an incident that damaged one of the test aircraft. However, it eventually entered service on schedule, with Pan Am operating it for the first time on January 22, 1970, from New York to London. If you're liking this video so far, why not click subscribe and hit the like button? Oh, and be sure to click that notification bell too. Upon its entry into service, the 747 transformed the existing aviation world in many ways. Perhaps most importantly, the jumbo jet changed the economics of flying.
And more people means lower prices. The addition of premium cabins meant that economy passengers could travel for less. And of course, the freight economics changed too. So, that massive capacity for cargo made it a realistic additional revenue stream for airlines, and that further allowed fares to be reduced. I did read that in its first year of operation, a fully loaded 747 cut the cost of flying in half. So, it drove exponential growth in air travel, in tourism. Flying instantly became accessible to the masses, and it really sort of shrank the world.
The increased capacity gave airlines much more scope for different pricing and ticket types. This was made all the more relevant with the deregulation of airfares in the United States. In many ways, this heralded the start of affordable long-haul travel. The increased space offered by the 747 not only allowed for more passengers and lower fares, but it also facilitated the introduction of new cabin features. Separate first and economy class seating had been prevalent since the late 1950s, but many airlines took this much further with the 747. Several airlines used the upper deck space to create separate and distinct lounge areas for first class. For example, Qantas offered one of the more notable innovations with its themed Captain Cook Lounge on its 747s. Pan Am used the upper deck as a restaurant for first-class passengers, while American Airlines offered a lounge with a bar and piano. In Asia, Air India, Singapore Airlines and Japan Airlines all had upper deck first-class lounges. Another significant change introduced by the 747 was its secondary function as a transporter of cargo. In fact, the 747 was designed from the outset to accommodate both. The location of the 747's cockpit on the upper deck allowed for a full-length main deck able to be maximized for cargo. Boeing saw cargo transport capabilities as crucial to the success of the program. Loading of goods would eventually be made even easier with the lifting nose. If passenger aircraft demand moved towards supersonic aircraft, then the 747 would still find a place as a heavy freighter. These days, a higher and higher proportion of 747s still flying are indeed freighters, a testament to Boeing's great design and foresight. Over the years, Boeing would unveil multiple variants of the 747 that would integrate technological improvements to provide more power, range, or efficiency for airline customers. Beyond the first -100 series, subsequent iterations would be designated the -200, -300, and -400, with additional suffixes for specialties. These would include SR for short range, SP for special performance, and ER for extended range, among several others. Beyond a full passenger variant, Boeing also developed 747 freighters and combination passenger freighter models known as combis. There were even special short-range variants for high-capacity domestic operations, as well as versions that offered an extended range. The 747-8 is the latest and final variant of the 747 and was launched in 2005. It first flew in 2010, offering more efficient engines, an improved cockpit, and larger fuselage. Despite offering an increased payload of around 16%, the 747-8 would never attain the same levels of popularity as the highly successful -400. There's not much to say about the 747's decline. A slow bleed over the last 20 years, the relatively low orders for the 747-8 were indicative of a growing trend towards more efficient twin-engine aircraft such as the Boeing 787 and Airbus A350.
The beginning of the end of the 747 came about with extended range twin engine operations, or ETOPS. Suddenly you didn't need 4 engines to go long haul across water, and 2 engines cost a lot less to fuel than 4. So, this kind of opened up point-to-point operations. With smaller planes, airlines could start targeting secondary airports. Hub and spoke was no longer the preferred way to travel.
To top it all off, these twin jets and their shorter wingspan also mean access to more airports. In fact, the 747 wasn't the only victim to this rising trend, as the Airbus A340 and A380 have also been retired at increasing rates, especially in 2020. Many airlines have since swapped the 747 for the twin-engine Boeing 777, which comes close in terms of capacity but performs much better in terms of efficiency and operating costs. Flying with 2 engines instead of 4 has also been made possible through huge gains in engine reliability. Higher levels of reliability now mean that aircraft can fly over oceans that once required 3 or 4 engines. Indeed, the events of 2020 have sealed the fate for the Queen of the Skies, as Boeing announced this year that it'll wind down 747 production once it completes its existing 747-8 orders. The 747's cargo use has in many ways outlasted passenger use. In fact, 4 of the 5 top operators in 2020 are cargo airlines. Atlas Air, Cargo Lux, UPS Airlines and Kalita Air still operate significant fleets of 747-400F aircraft, and the first 3 of these also operate the 747-8F. While the 747 will become a much less common sight on passenger routes going forward, it will likely remain in freight use for many years to come. For thousands of travellers, the 747 will have a special place in the travel experience. For some, the 747 was the ship that facilitated a special family holiday or a once-in-a-lifetime trip around the world. For others, it was the jet that took them on countless overnight business flights to secure important deals.
I'm sure, like a lot of other people, it was my first long-haul flight. I absolutely remember it as clear as day, Virgin Atlantic to New York from London at the tender age of 15. I'll never forget the experience.
Beyond regular passenger service, the 747 has also had a role in transporting world leaders and royalty, as well as delivering critical supplies to all corners of the world. While the 747 and its unique hump may slowly fade from travel itineraries, it will live on much longer in the collective memory of frequent flyers the world over. What are your fondest memories flying on the Boeing 747? Share them with us by leaving a comment. Did you know that we publish over 175 stories every single week on simpleflying.com? Be sure to check the link in the description for more great stories just like this. Thanks for watching, and be sure to like and subscribe before you go.